Lights, camera, action, baby. It's Kyle back with the fantasy headliners. We are diving in to our tight end research for week 11 of the NFL season. We've got 4 more teams on a bye this week. We had 1 major injury at the position. We've got a lot of guys banged up and a ton of inconsistencies. So if you're not starting Travis Kelce, or if he's healthy, Mark Andrews, you're concerned with the tight end position right now. You don't know what you're going to get every single week. So this may be one of the most important shows you watch all season long. Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, and leave a comment down below. It's time to jump right into all the research. And let's kick it off with Thursday Night Football. For the Tennessee Titans, Austin Hooper has been the guy almost all season long. Then Chiggy Okonkwo all of a sudden shows up. Couple of games back-to-back, decent yards, nothing to write home about. But now when you add a second tight end option in there, it just reinforces this Tennessee team that we're not going to be doing anything at that position for them. For Big Bobby Tonyan, I mean, he's only passed 40 receiving yards 1 time this season, and that even includes him, having a team full of injured wide receivers around him, and he has still not done anything. That connection with Aaron Rodgers that we saw a couple of years ago, right now, seems like it's something of the past. Chicago and Atlanta, and who would know come week 11 that Cole Kmet would be a much better play than Kyle Pitts at the tight end position. That's just how it's gone this year for Kyle Pitts. But for Cole Kmet, I mean, he's the go-to for Justin Fields right now. And Jake and I said this in our show yesterday. We commend the Chicago Bears for being able to make a decision and say, hey, yep, we weren't putting together good game plans at the beginning of the year, and now we've kind of found what is it that we love, what is it that Justin Fields does well, who's the top weapon, and we've seen Justin Fields and Cole Kmet absolutely flourish over the last few weeks. Cole Kmet, tight end 1 right now over the last 3 weeks. The dude is playing absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely love to see it. He was a breakout candidate for ours. It took a few weeks, but he's finally here. For Kyle Pitts, Chicago allows the sixth fewest fantasy points to tight ends, and he's only passed 30 receiving yards. Guess. Just say it in your head real quick. How many times has Kyle Pitts passed 30 receiving yards this season? It's 1. 1 time. So we've got a tight end that's only had more than 30 receiving yards once and facing the 6th toughest defense against tight ends. That's a sit for me. Carolina and Baltimore will be a matchup to watch this week, not for anything on the Carolina side, but for Mark Andrews. As of right now, the reports are that he is going to be expected back this week. If Mark Andrews plays, we play him. Now, not the greatest matchup in the world, but it doesn't matter if Mark Andrews is on the field, especially coming out of the bye where he had a week to get himself healthy. I'm absolutely putting him in my lineup. Now, that would mean that we're not starting Isaiah Likely. But for you Mark Andrews owners, if you did grab Likely, I would still hold out just a little bit longer in case something were to happen. He tweaks something again. Maybe he does end up being limited this week. And then you've got his backup and a great option to toss in there. Cleveland and Buffalo, and hopefully David Njoku's a little bit closer this week. Even if he doesn't end up playing this week, still, let's progress a little bit. Let's get you to the point where when the fantasy playoffs are here, David Njoku is going to be our guy. Buffalo allows the 7th fewest fantasy points to tight ends right now. So David Njoku is going to be listed as a sit for me. We don't know if he's going to play. We don't know if he's going to be limited. So as of right now, we're just going to put sit down and we'll monitor it throughout the week. If we find out later in the week that he plays, make sure you check out the tight end rankings so you know who exactly he's going to be played over. For Dawson Knox, I mean, Cleveland allows the 4th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. And here's my issue with Dawson Knox, and the reason he was a bust for me in the draft guide this year. Last season, he didn't have the targets or the receptions to sustain the performance that he put together last year, which was solely based on touchdowns. Well, guess what? He's still not getting the targets. He's still not getting the receptions. And now he's not getting the touchdowns either. He's only scored twice this season. Dawson Knox for me is a guy that we're going to move on from now, and we're just going to leave on our bench, or honestly, probably the waiver wire, unless we were to find a better matchup. Washington and Houston, and Logan Thomas has been pretty disappointing. I don't know if it's the game plan. I don't know if it's him. Maybe it's Heineke. I'm not sure, but he hasn't done anything since week 2. Since week 2, he doesn't have a game with more than 20 receiving yards. Logan Thomas, unfortunately, is waiver wire fodder. If you've been holding on to him, if you tried to use him or whatever, if you're trying to stream him, he's not going to be an option that we're going to use. For Jordan Akins, Washington allows the second fewest fantasy points to tight ends. Houston tight ends have been inconsistent this year. It's a tough matchup. There's still several of them playing at one time. Brevin Jordan's still getting looks. Jordan Akins is the most likely to have a big game, but in this scenario, it's not a good one. So unfortunately, we've got some breaking news, and I actually needed to redo this portion of the video because after I was done and we started editing, we found out that Dallas Goedert is now slated to miss multiple weeks with a shoulder injury. I hate to see it. This is so tough. Goedert was like the next safest tight end after Zach Ertz went down, and then behind Mark Andrews, and then of course Travis Kelce. George Kittle is right up there. And to be honest with you, if you're watching this portion of the video, I think later in the video, I say something about Dallas Goedert being ranked behind Travis Kelce and George Kittle and Mark Andrews. Just ignore that. Ignore that part. In terms of replacements, I don't know if it's going to be anybody on Philadelphia. They've got a couple of guys. Jack Stoll is one of them that could end up stepping in to kind of be that next tight end up. But honestly, it shifts more to the wide receivers for me at this point, maybe utilizing the running backs a little bit. I don't really know if we're going to utilize the tight ends. For me personally, I'm not going to start any of them this week just because, again, we don't know what it's going to look like. So I'm going to leave any tight end off the board for Philadelphia until we know a little bit more. And then redoing Indianapolis here real quick. You know, Mo Alley-Cox and Jelani Woods, both of these guys, a little bit banged up. Kylan Granson didn't have that bad of a game this week. We're going to keep an eye on this because if Mo Alley-Cox and Jelani Woods both end up missing time this week, Kylan Granson could end up becoming a dude that we put in our lineups and just see what happens. But check out those rankings later on in the week to see. Oh, but man, losing Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz in the same weekend is a huge, huge blow to fantasy owners. The New York Jets and the New England Patriots, both teams coming out of the bye, ample time to prepare. New England allows the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends. So based on that and some of the numbers that you see there, other Tyler Conklin, you're going to think to yourself, Tyler Conklin's a great start this week. Hold it. Just wait a second, okay? I would love this matchup if it wasn't for the drop in usage from Tyler Conklin, because 20 does seem like a large number, right? The larger the number, the more confident we are in starting him. Well, let's look at the numbers. The production and the volume are 4 and 4, mainly based on one top 12 performance from week 4. Decent start to the beginning of the season, has had one huge game since then with 2 touchdowns. But if you look at the games around him, he hasn't done anything. So the numbers are a little misleading. 5 for the matchup. Yes, great matchup going up against New England. We got to give him a 5 there. He gets a 5 for the injury factor as well, right? There's been guys banged up. There's been guys missing. Elijah Moore isn't doing anything. He's not hurt. So, of course, this would be a guy that we would think, hey, this is somebody we need to start. And we give him a 2 as the X factor. So while the numbers add up to 20, I believe that they're very misleading because he is a very, very, very risky play right now. With that being said, because this is not a good week for tight ends, he's a guy that we probably need to risk it with over several other people. And you'll see who that will be in the rankings videos. For now, if you own Tyler Conklin, start or plan on starting him, and then we'll see if there's anybody else that you can throw in there before him. Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. I say it basically every single week. There are not 2 tight ends in the league that are more misused than these guys. The Los Angeles Rams and the New Orleans Saints is going to bring us a couple of starts this week. Tyler Higbee probably going to end up being a safe start, all right? New Orleans does allow the fewest fantasy points to tight ends on the season, but we're going to be missing Cooper Kupp. We're going to be missing Cooper Kupp. Van Jefferson is only a few games back from his injury. And who else does the team really have to rely on? They don't have anybody making plays right now outside of Cooper Kupp. So Tyler Higbee absolutely is going to be a guy that we're going to throw out there because those targets are going to need to go to somebody, and Tyler Higbee is probably going to be a benefactor of that. For Juwan Johnson, he's going to be a start for me this week. I've already told people multiple times about Taysom Hill. In fact, let me find my numbers here real quick. For those of you that aren't a member, I did a little Taysom Hill research and did a video on him yesterday. Let's talk about Taysom Hill for a second because some of you out there are going to say, I'm still starting him because I love the upside. Keep telling yourself that. 1 passing touchdown since week 5. Or one passing touchdown, which was in week 5. One receiving touchdown this season was in week 7. Now he has had 5 rushing touchdowns, but 3 of them came in one game, and those were in week 5. He hasn't done anything since then. In fact, his fantasy points per week in a half PPR league, 4.5, 9.6, 7.8, 1.1, and 0.1. That is since week 5. He is currently, since then, the tight end 25. He's only finished as a top 10 tight end 3 times this season. So if you're going to bring the argument to me that Taysom Hill can win you a week just because he had one good game, you're basically betting on one good game out of 10. Do you like those odds? Do you like starting a tight end that 10% of the time will win you a week? I don't. Do not come at me in the comments with this Taysom Hill garbage anymore. He could go off for 45 points this week, and you could come back to the comments and tell me how wrong I am, when in reality I'm still going to be right, because guess what? He's won you your week 2 times in 11 weeks. The percentage barely jumped at all. Stop telling me Taysom Hill is a winner at the tight end position. He is not. Drop him. Stop playing him. The dude isn't doing anything to help you. You know who is, though? Juwan Johnson is. LA is allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points to tight ends, but in a week when we have so few options, Johnson's going to be a start for me. The touchdowns have been there. Would love a little bit more volume, but he is a true red zone weapon for the Saints right now. Detroit, the New York Giants, isn't going to have a whole lot for us, right? Since the trade of TJ Hockenson, they have 3 tight ends that they kind of been shuffling in and out of the mix. Nobody's really doing anything. For Chris Myarick for the New York Giants, I mean, Detroit does allow the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends, but he hasn't had more than 2 targets in a game all season. We're sitting everybody here. Las Vegas and Denver is going to come with one risky option and one option that should be safe, but he plays for the Denver Broncos. Foster Moreau, with no Darren Waller being on the IR, I like his potential. Denver allows the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends over the last 4 weeks. Their defense over the last 4 weeks against tight ends has not been great. So because of that, Foster Moreau, knowing that we have no Hunter Renfrow, knowing that we have no Darren Waller, and knowing that this has been a very inconsistent offense over the last several weeks, really all season long, I'm going to go with him this week. I've got a gut feeling that Foster Moreau potentially finds the end zone this week or gives us about 8 fantasy points if he doesn't. Greg Dulcich, I know he let a lot of you down last week, and that sucks, but Las Vegas allows the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends. And this is an opportunity for a bounce back, especially considering that there might be no Jerry Jeudy this week. We need to go with Greg Dulcich again. I think that this is going to be a very safe play. Even if the upside doesn't end up being there, the dude should be a lock for 6 to 8 targets. Dallas and Minnesota is going to bring my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Head on over to manscaped.com. Use code word headliners when you check out. Everything in your cart, you're going to be 20% off, and you're going to get free shipping. For Dallas and Minnesota, Dalton Schultz is going to be a very safe tight end play for me this week. I absolutely love it. He'll probably be my tight end 4, right behind Dallas Goedert. Schultz has been the tight end 7 since he came back from his injury. Now he gets a really good matchup. He scored a touchdown last week, and the targets have absolutely been there for him. TJ Hockenson. Dallas is allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. They're very athletic at the linebacker position, so they're able to cover tight ends a little bit better than some other teams. But Hawk has 19 targets, 16 receptions since he arrived in Minnesota. So the touchdown is going to be coming soon. And even if we see a little bit of a dip in volume, that touchdown that we just talked about could come this week against Dallas. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, and I know with no Jamar Chase that Hayden Hurst was the guy that a lot of people thought could kind of get back to the fantasy relevancy that we saw at the beginning of the season. But it's Boyd, it's Higgins, and it's on the ground with Joe Mixon. And I expect them to follow that blueprint in this game against Pittsburgh, establish the run the football, be dominant with it, coming out of the bye, big game from Joe Mixon, do those things, open up the passing game for Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, and it's all going to work out fine this week against Pittsburgh. Unless you're trying to play Hayden Hurst. I don't see that one working out. Pat Freiermuth, though, not great week 10, but he still saw 7 targets, all right? So, a little bit of a down performance, still saw the targets. Love to see that. And over his last 3 games, 23 total targets. That's what we want from the tight end position. We've got no Chase Claypool anymore. Muth is going to be the guy in the red zone that's going to be the looks. And really, for me right now, he's kind of the 1B with George Pickens, and Deontay Johnson's a little bit of the afterthought for me. If there's anybody I wanted to bet on in this offense, it's Pat Freiermuth. KC and the LA Chargers, and we already know, right, that Travis Kelce, he's a start. He's a guy that every single week we're putting in our lineup, and we feel great about it. So there's nothing to say there. Gerald Everett right now is going to be a sit, though. He's dealing with a growing injury, had to leave last week's game. We're going to monitor it over the course of the week. Now, more than likely, whoever his replacement ends up being, we're not going to start them in this matchup. It's not a great matchup. Kansas City does a decent job against tight ends. They're going to have to throw it a little bit, but we're looking at possibly Mike Williams and Keenan Allen being back this week. Josh Palmer's been playing well. DeAndre Carter's been playing well. And because of all that, regardless of what happens with Gerald Everett, probably going to sit him this week and just be patient with the injury. Monday Night Football is going to take us to the end of the week. Arizona and the San Francisco 49ers. For the 49ers, Arizona allows the second most fantasy points to tight ends. So take that George Kittle key, stick it in, twist it, start him up, lock him in. And I did lie earlier because I said that Dale Goddard was probably going to be my tight end 3. That's probably wrong because George Kittle will probably be my tight end 2. Mark Andrews will be my tight end 3. And then we'll fill things in after there. There's some decent guys this week. I know towards the back end we're going to get a little bit scary, but some of the better tight ends have good matchups this week, and I love that. Zach Ertz done for the season, unfortunately, and it hurts my heart because the dude was having such a great campaign. I absolutely love this guy this season. He was one of my main, this is the guy that I want to draft. He was performing well for everybody, and he's done. Now, rookie Trey McBride is going to step in. He's going to be a guy that will, try to help fill the Zach Ertz shoes. The only problem with that is we've got DeAndre Hopkins back, right? Rondale Moore has started to break out, and as of this morning, Marquise Brown is progressing towards returning soon. So we don't know when he's going to be back. I've got to see McBride in action. I got to see what he does. I got to see how he's utilized. And before I see that, I can't risk starting him. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate y'all tuning into this episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully y'all got a ton of information that you needed to make some start and sit decisions this week. Leave me a like before you leave the video. Drop a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And ladies and gentlemen, I always appreciate the support no matter what. Thanks everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll catch y'all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.